My name is Caroline. Dinner at my in-laws' estate on the outskirts of Connecticut had never made me feel at ease, but tonight, something felt different. It wasn't the overcooked roast, or the cold chandelier hanging over a dining table fit for royalty. It was the way everyone looked at me. Too calm, too prepared. Like they had rehearsed for weeks for a performance I hadn't been given the script for. Judith, my mother-in-law, sat across from me, wearing the pearl necklace she reserved for serious negotiations. Her smile was soft as whipped cream, but her eyes were harder than granite. Caroline, you've always been emotional. That's a strength when caring for Emily, but sometimes a weakness when it comes to finances. Each word landed like ice cubes dropped into bourbon, burning without flame. I glanced at my husband, Thomas, the man I once believed would protect me from the world. But tonight, he wouldn't meet my eyes, as if I had become the threat. His hand rested lightly on my thigh, paper thin. Not to comfort, but to restrain. Next to Judith sat her husband, Gregory, a retired businessman who once ran a major transportation company. He calmly opened a folder in front of him, speaking with the tone of someone presenting at a board meeting. We've been thinking carefully about Emily's care fund. It's over $700,000. With proper management, it could generate long-term gains, instead of just being gradually spent. I pushed my wine glass aside. Gains? That money is for wheelchairs, medication, physical therapy, not an investment portfolio. Judith nodded, her expression unchanged. Exactly why we believe it should be overseen by experienced people. The family has connections to top financial advisors. They can grow the fund. I laughed, sharp, foreign even to me. Emily is a human being, not a stock waiting to rise. Thomas finally spoke, his voice quiet like a balm. They're just thinking about the future. You've sacrificed so much, no one denies that. But maybe you're too close to see the bigger picture. I turned to him, words cutting through the air. You mean those 6 years I woke up at 3 a.m. to change her feeding tube? Or leaving my job in Chicago to take care of her full-time with no breaks? That kind of too close? The room fell silent. Gregory slid the folder toward me. This is just a formality. You'll still be Emily's legal guardian. We simply want financial oversight to be handled by professionals. I skimmed the documents. The words were slick, cold. Transfer of full financial decision-making power. Irrevocable authorization. No routine reporting required. To the current guardian. Judith's smile didn't budge. You just need to sign here. Everything has been reviewed by legal counsel. We all want what's best for Emily. I stared directly at Thomas, waiting for a flicker of the man I had once loved. But he only nodded. Caroline, it's not a big deal. It's just paperwork. I slowly withdrew my hand from his. Not a big deal? Then why the need for a secret family dinner just to get my signature? Why wasn't this discussed beforehand? Gregory frowned. You're overreacting. I gave a quiet, emotionless laugh. No. This is me when I'm clear-headed. And I knew. This storm was just beginning. 3 days after that dinner, Thomas started coming home late. His excuses varied. Long meetings, traffic on I-95, visiting an old friend who was sick. But he could never remember the friend's name, or which company had meetings lasting until 10 p.m. On Saturday night, while I was making soup for Emily, I saw Thomas's phone face down on the kitchen counter. Normally, he kept it in his pocket, even in the shower. I hadn't intended to invade his privacy, but when the screen lit up, the message preview was clear. Bobby G. The deal went smoothly. She suspects nothing. The fund will be ours next week. I froze. The ladle stopped mid-stir. Ours? Deal. Emily wasn't a commodity. I took a photo of the screen, my hand shaking. Not from anger, but from a cold that crept through every vertebra. The truth was out. Thomas wasn't just complicit. He was leading the plan. I called Grace, my closest friend since college in Vermont. She was the only one who had seen me care for Emily from the start, after our parents died in that accident. After a long pause on the line, she said firmly, "You need a lawyer, a sharp one." "I don't know any." "I do. Meet him tomorrow. His name is Aaron West. He works out of Providence. Small office, but razor sharp when it comes to disability protection law." The next day, I drove nearly 2 hours to Rhode Island. Aaron's office was on the second floor of an old building, with frosted glass doors and a rusted bell. He didn't need a polished suit or marble lobby, just a firm handshake and eyes that missed nothing. I handed him everything: the screenshot, the copy of the documents my in-laws wanted me to sign, and Emily's medical records. Aaron flipped through each page like a juror reading a verdict. Finally, he looked up. "Good news is, they have no legal right if you're the appointed guardian." Bad news? They can still create noise, sue you, smear your name. I nodded. "I'm not just trying to defend myself, I want to make sure they never touch her fund again." Then we convert it to a special needs trust. Can't be contested, can't be reassigned, can't be manipulated, not even by family. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked quietly with Aaron and Grace. We restructured everything: new trustees, third-party oversight, airtight confidentiality. All documents were notarized in Boston under the name Caroline Nash, my mother's maiden name. Meanwhile, I began acting vulnerable, asking Tomas naive questions about money, pretending to stress over rising costs. I even mixed up Emily's appointment dates to make him believe I was slipping. I knew he was watching. Then I planted audio recorders. One under the dining table, one behind the orchid in the living room, and the smallest hidden under the couch, where his family always schemed when I stepped out. Every word, every smug chuckle, was captured. A week later, I got the recording I needed. Gregory's voice, clear as day. "Once Caroline signs, the money moves to the secondary account. We withdraw first, invest later. If anything goes wrong, blame her mental health." Then Judith, voice sharp enough to draw blood. "She's already worn out. 10 years of caregiving and she's graying. Anyone can see she's over it. We need someone clearer-headed." I listened to that clip 12 times. Not to remember, but to make sure I never forgot. That night, after Emily fell asleep, I backed up every audio file onto a hard drive and locked it in the safe. One copy went to Aaron, another to Grace. Both were silent for several moments after listening. Aaron broke the silence first. "We'll use this. When they're sure they've won, we pull the curtain. And when it drops, no one walks away clean." I looked out the window. Trees trembling under the amber porch light. And I knew, deep down, there was no turning back. Only forward. On Friday night, Judith called and invited me to a family dinner at the lakeside estate in Norwalk. Her voice was sweet, like honey laced with sedative. "Just a little gathering, Caroline, nothing serious, dear." I nodded politely and hung up. Looking out to the backyard, where Emily was laughing as the sprinkler startled her, I whispered to myself, "It's time to end this act." I chose a cream-colored dress, simple and soft, unthreatening. Light makeup, low bun, the look of a woman worn down from years of caregiving. Before leaving the house, I opened the bookshelf, pulled out the mini recorder hidden inside Gone Girl, and tucked it carefully into my purse. Full battery. 8 hours of memory. The main backup was already with Grace. Gregory and Judith's estate sat still by the lake, water as flat as glass. Inside, warm yellow lighting and soft classical music played. Thomas greeted me, adjusting his collar like an actor fixing his costume before curtain call. He kissed my cheek, and I smelled the wine on his breath, a sign of nerves disguised as calm. The dinner table was meticulously set, scented candles, white lilies, a decanter of red wine, just the way Judith liked it. Gregory took his usual seat at the head, still carrying the posture of a boardroom veteran. Judith smiled her social smile and pulled out my chair. "No business talk tonight, Caroline," she said sweetly. "We're family, after all, aren't we?" I nodded, my eyes drifting toward the thick envelope placed neatly on my plate. My name was printed in cursive. No one touched the food. This was just the stage for their carefully choreographed persuasion. Gregory began, his voice steady, dripping with self-importance. "We know you've done an amazing job with Emily, but the future requires planning. If the fund is managed well, she'll have long-term financial security." Thomas chimed in, placing a hand over mine. "You don't have to carry everything alone. Sharing is a deeper form of love, isn't it?" I smiled faintly, nodding. "You're right, maybe I've been too stubborn." Judith lit up like a chandelier. "I knew you'd understand. This is the right move." I opened the envelope, pulled out the documents. My eyes passed over the cold language: financial authority, decision rights transfer, liability waiver. I picked up the pen, signed each page slowly, every curve of my signature deliberate, like I was completely in agreement. Thomas exhaled. Gregory gave a pleased nod. Judith raised her wine glass. "To a secure future." I clinked glasses with her, swallowing the bitter wine. "To Emily." I stayed long enough not to arouse suspicion. When the beef stew was finally served, I reached under my napkin, hit the stop button on my phone recorder, and quietly excused myself. "Emily's having a hard time sleeping tonight," I explained. I didn't look back as I walked out of the estate. My heartbeat was steady. I got into the car, locked the door, and started the engine. My phone lit up. "Grace. Is it done?" "Done, crystal clear recording." "And the papers?" I signed. "But they mean nothing now. I had already moved the entire care fund into a special needs trust 2 weeks ago, under third-party oversight in Hartford. Aaron personally ensured every step was legal and irreversible. Even if I signed 10 more times, they couldn't touch a single cent. When I got home, Emily was asleep. I walked into her room, adjusted her pillow, gently pulled the blanket over her shoulders. Her face, under the nightlight, was as peaceful as an angel's. "They think I surrendered, Em," I whispered. "But they don't know. I've been several steps ahead." I stepped out, closed the door softly behind me. The war wasn't over. But my side had just gained the upper hand. And they wouldn't know until it was far too late. 4 days after that dinner, I received a court summons. The envelope bore the name of Hastings and Lyle, the law firm where Gregory once held shares. I opened it in the kitchen, my hands still dusted with breadcrumbs Emily had spilled. The document was thick, sealed in red, and the title stood out in bold: "Allegation of financial fraud and misappropriation of a special needs trust." I gave a faint smile. Not because I was shocked. This had been part of the plan all along. That evening, I called Grace to stay with Emily and drove straight to Aaron West's office. A light rain misted the windshield like silver fog. Aaron was waiting with hot coffee, his expression calm, like he had already read the next chapter in this legal novel. "They really filed?" he asked, unsurprised. "Yes. They're claiming I unlawfully moved the fund, abused my guardianship, and am financially unfit." Aaron chuckled and opened his laptop. "Then it's time for our special folder: dinner recording, Bobby G's text, the forced authorization papers, and..." He pulled a fresh file from his drawer. "Here's the juicy part. A civil investigation report from a credit specialist." I leaned in. "What is it?" "Gregory? 3 years ago he used the name Emily Nash, Dependent Minor Trust, as collateral to secure a loan for a resort expansion project in Vermont. The venture collapsed after COVID. He's still in default." My fists clenched. "He used my sister's name to borrow money?" "Not directly, but enough to qualify as financial fraud. It was labeled as a family support trust asset. There's a notarized file, bank forms, and, notably, no signature or consent from the legal guardian. That's you. I sighed and poured more coffee. So they filed the suit to cover up their own illegal mess? Exactly. Attack first, distract second. The next morning, Grace called again. Caroline, remember Linda? She lived near Gregory years ago. Judith's cousin's daughter? Isn't she the one with the autistic son, always trying to get Medicaid coverage? Right. She reached out after hearing about your case. Judith convinced her to sign over a small fund meant for her son. Told her it would be an investment for the family's future. She never saw a cent. Then they ghosted her. An hour later, I sat across from Linda in a cafe near Emily's old elementary school. She brought a folder packed with emails, receipts, and a shady power of attorney draft written by Gregory himself. I asked her to sign a formal statement. She agreed without hesitation. Days later, another call came. Is Caroline? This is Natalie. I was Emily's home care nurse last year. I heard about the lawsuit. Honestly, I'm angry. You know something? I remember Judith showing up, claiming to be from a nonprofit. She grilled me on your routines, meds, even your mental state. It felt off. They had no authority. I paused. Would you testify? If needed, I'll write a full statement. I took notes, with dates and times. One by one, the evidence stacked higher: collusion, forged documents, intimidation, and now a counter-lawsuit designed to erase their own tracks. What they didn't know, every move had been documented, archived, and now witnesses were coming to me. That night, I sat in my home office, the final defense folder open on my computer. Each audio file was labeled chronologically. Gregory. Fund transfer scheme. Judith. Calls Caroline unstable. Thomas. Promises to make her sign. I opened the window. The cool breeze drifted in. Emily was asleep in the next room. I whispered into the night. They think I'm the soft one, but I turned to stone the moment they saw Emily as prophet. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse with Aaron, clutching the thick case file. The court clerk nodded and handed over the sealed docket. They had started this war, but the fire wouldn't burn the way they wanted. I wasn't there to beg for justice. I came to burn every lie to the ground. Courtroom 3 at the Fairfield County Courthouse was packed that morning. A local journalist sat in the last row, notebook open. Judith sat to the left of the plaintiff's table, her expression stiff, layers of makeup failing to hide the pallor. Gregory flipped through documents constantly, feigning focus. Thomas, slouched and distant, avoided everyone's gaze as if he no longer wanted to belong to the side he sat with. I entered with Aaron by my side, clutching the folder that held every original piece of evidence. Grace sat quietly in the back row and gave me a reassuring nod. Emily was at home, cared for by a private nurse. I wouldn't let her witness a morning where the ugliest truths of family were laid bare under oath. Judge Landon, an older man with a commanding voice that could quiet a full room, opened the session. We are here to consider a civil case regarding the care fund for Emily Nash. The plaintiffs allege that the defendant, Mrs. Caroline Nash, misappropriated the trust for personal gain. The defendant counters with allegations of fraud, coercion, and a scheme to seize financial control from a dependent individual. The hearing began. The plaintiff's attorney attempted to spin a narrative that I was emotionally overwhelmed, lacking financial clarity, and that they were merely concerned family members trying to help. But when Aaron rose, the tone shifted with his very first sentence. Your Honor, we submit into record a series of verified evidence, audio recordings that expose intentions to usurp the trust, emails from an intermediary, a notarized statement from a nurse approached to manipulate medical records, and, most significantly, proof that Mr. Gregory Miller used the name of a dependent minor to illegally secure a mortgage loan in 2021. He laid down each document. Every name mentioned, every printed number, every forged signature was another nail sealing the coffin of their manufactured decency. Then the courtroom fell silent as the recording played. Judith's voice, crisp and clear. She's weak. Just a few more nudges and she'll sign. Gasps rippled through the audience. When the resort mortgage under Emily's name came up, Gregory straightened in his seat, his face turning crimson. Then it was my turn. I stepped forward, with empty hands, no script, no notes. Only the truth. Emily Nash is my sister. I've cared for her every day for the past 10 years, since our parents died. I changed her feeding tubes. I fought insurance battles. I gave up my career in Boston. Not a single dollar from her fund was spent on me. In fact, I fought for every cent she received. I glanced at Thomas, who still stared at the floor. They don't see Emily as a person. To them, she's a number, a dollar sign, but to me, she is family. And the reason I'm still standing. Judge Landon leaned back and tapped his gavel lightly. Having reviewed all materials, heard the recordings, and assessed all testimony, I issue the following ruling. 1. Caroline Nash remains the sole and legal guardian of Emily Nash. 2. Gregory and Judith Miller are permanently barred from any access to Emily or her associated care funds. 3. Thomas Miller, having no remaining legal standing, is also stripped of any authority over dependent financial matters. 4. The allegations of financial fraud will be referred to the appropriate federal investigative body. The gavel struck once, sharp and final. It felt like the end of a long, poisoned play. As I walked out of the courthouse, sunlight poured over the stone steps. Gregory had lost his usual swagger. Judith wore dark sunglasses that couldn't hide her shame. Thomas lingered behind them, silent. I didn't look back. Grace met me outside and asked softly, "How does it feel?" I looked toward the parking lot. Like the storm passed, and this time, I'm still standing. The press would run stories. Judith would be quietly removed from the boards she once advised. Gregory's real estate project would fall under federal scrutiny. And Thomas, he might lose his job, his reputation, and everything he thought he owned. But I only needed one thing, my sister's safety. And now, I had it, on paper, in law, and in my heart. 1 month after the trial, Emily and I moved into a small 2-story house in the town of Guilford. Far from everything that had once belonged to the Miller family. No more lakeside mansions, no more cold white walls. No lingering scent of overpriced perfume in velvet curtains. Our new home had a wide lawn, a stone path, and a sun-drenched room I turned into Emily's therapy space. Emily adored it all. She especially loved the round window on the second floor. Each afternoon, she'd sit for hours watching the sunlight dance through amber-colored leaves. For the first time in years, she felt peace without having to be on guard. I signed the divorce papers on a Monday morning at Aaron's office. No tears, no pleas. Just a single, firm signature that closed a chapter I now called a mistake. Thomas didn't show. His lawyers sent a dry, printed letter that ended with, "I hope you find peace." I chuckled softly when I read that line. Grace moved nearby, renting an apartment just 3 blocks away. She brought 2 laptops, a giant whiteboard, and an unwavering belief that we were meant to do more than just survive. "Caroline," she said one evening as we sipped tea on the porch, "why don't you turn your experience into a tool for others? Not everyone has a lawyer for a friend, or the clarity to record everything. But if they have access, guidance, and a clear legal model." I nodded. This time, I didn't need convincing. 3 weeks later, Guardian Resolve was born. A community initiative providing legal support and financial training for guardians, especially those caring for children or relatives with disabilities. Our first online seminars drew over 500 participants from 16 states. Parents, caregivers, even law students. A single mom in Arizona, whose brother-in-law tried to split her autistic son's fund. A woman in Minnesota, sued by her own mother for financial incompetence. And then, states began to take notice. Aaron emailed me with a subject line in all caps. "You're being cited." The Caroline Nash v. Miller case is now being referenced in 3 ongoing trust disputes, in Illinois, Oregon, and Pennsylvania. Attorneys are using the special needs trust framework we created as a legal model. I stared at the screen in silence, then laughed, not from pride, but because it felt like I'd finally laid the first brick in a house that wasn't just for me. That morning, while Emily trained with her therapist, I sat at my desk taking calls from our legal response team. An elderly woman in Louisiana cried because someone finally listened to her story about her grandson with cerebral palsy. A young man in Florida sent us a new logo design and pitched an idea for an app to track therapy expenses. Grace walked in and pointed to the calendar. "We've got a CBS Morning invite tomorrow. They want your story, it's spreading." I sighed. "I don't want to be famous." "You don't have to be, you just have to remind people they're not alone." That night, I wrote a summary of the entire legal battle, a 10-minute read for anyone in need. I titled it, "A Guide to Fighting Financial Manipulation Within Families." Then I printed the first 50 copies. Emily went to bed early after playing with her new color-changing nightlight. I sat by the window, looking out at the freshly trimmed grass and catching the scent of mint from the garden along the fence. Part of me still couldn't believe it was over. But day by day, the silence no longer felt threatening. And for the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for the next storm. I was rebuilding, brick by brick, step by step. Not to defend, but to hold the door open for others to walk through. One October afternoon, as red leaves blanketed the yard, I received a handwritten letter. The sender was Jennifer, a single mother from Montana whom I had never met. In the letter, she wrote about being pressured by her own parents to hand over financial authority to her younger brother, after her daughter was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. They told her she was too weak for big decisions, and that it was best to let someone with a business mind handle things. She believed them, until there was only $300 left in the account, and her daughter couldn't afford treatment anymore. I found Guardian Resolve one night while looking into how to sell my car to buy my daughter's medication. I read your story, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a foolish failure. I was just a mother trying to protect the one thing she had left. Thank you. You didn't save me, you helped me stand up to save myself. I sat in silence for hours after reading it. Outside, Emily was playing with Grace, her hand fluttering in the wind, her eyes sparkling in the golden light of the late afternoon. She had no idea she was the reason any of this was possible. I used to think protecting Emily was my only boundary. But stepping past that line, I learned something. Love doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't belong on a balance sheet or in a boardroom debate. Love might be soft, but it's the strongest material you can use to build a wall against manipulation, betrayal, and greed. They thought I'd break. Because I was a woman, because I cared for a disabled child alone, because I was too emotional. But they forgot one thing. Those who've been deeply hurt often develop the fiercest resistance to poison. Judith no longer appeared on the boards of any major art foundations. Gregory, according to Aaron, had sold off his real estate shares to repay fraudulent loans. As for Thomas, I hadn't heard anything. And honestly, I didn't need to. Guardian Resolve now had a real office in New Haven. We ran in-person training sessions, partnered with local law schools, and launched a 24/7 hotline for urgent issues involving dependent care funds. In just 6 months, we'd helped more than 200 families across 12 states. But what I'm most proud of is what I see when I look at Emily each day. She is no longer caught in the crossfire of power plays. She laughs, eats well, sleeps peacefully. She is no longer the centerpiece of a legal battle she never asked to be part of. Some nights, I still think about that lakeside estate. The bright kitchen, the perfectly ironed tablecloths, the sound of wine being poured, the eyes across the table. Never asking what Emily needed, only how much was left in the fund. If this story reaches you, someone fighting to retain even a shred of decision-making power, someone told, "You're too irrational," or someone simply feeling lost in the chaos of family and finances. Remember this: you are not alone. And if anyone ever says you're too emotional to decide, ask them, "Do you love the person I'm protecting?" I love Emily for no reason at all, and that gave me every reason to protect her completely. And if you ask me what got me through it all, it wasn't the law, it wasn't the recordings, it wasn't my network. It was the moment I looked into my sister's eyes in that cold courtroom and knew I didn't let them take her from my arms. Love, when it isn't tethered to self-interests, doesn't need to win to prove anything. But in this story, it did. And I'm only just beginning to write the next chapter. Caroline's story is a powerful reminder that true courage doesn't come from status or power. It comes from unconditional love and unshakable resolve in the face of injustice. When betrayed by her own family, she didn't choose silence or compromise. She exposed the truth, step by step, and protected her vulnerable sister from manipulation. In the real world, many families still fight to keep control over their disabled loved ones. And Caroline has paved the way so they no longer have to walk that road alone. What do you think of Caroline's decision? What would you do in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories and powerful family lessons.